Hi everyone, this is Jim. Before I get started on this video, I wanted to mention that I'm going to be busy this weekend, so I won't be uploading any videos for a couple of days. And if you're looking for something to do over the weekend, you can. I have there's two things I wanted to mention. I have a playlist page on this channel where I've assembled a bunch of playlists, so you can browse through that, see if there's any playlists there that look interesting to you. And the second thing I wanted to mention is I do have another channel called Jim Plays Go. It's in the channels, the featured channels at the right of this page, or there's also a channels page where you can find it. It's if you had ever had any interest in the game of Go, it's a very gentle introduction to the subject. I'm a beginner myself, and I have a beginning Go series, a playlist on that channel that takes you from absolute zero up to the point. There's about 25 videos in it now where it's a pretty decent introduction to the game, I think. So if you have any interest in that, go check it out, and I will see you when I get back. This video is about a game I played in the club, not this week, but last week. Last week we started a new tournament, and actually both last week's game and this week's game were interesting. So I thought I would start with last week's game. And this game I'm using this, this has got a lot of good material for that series I did, Chess Mistakes of an A Player. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of mistakes in this game. And I hope to draw some lessons. And the first one is, well, let's put the first two moves on the board. He played d4, I played knight f6, he played c4. And I'm playing a stronger player. My opponent with the white pieces has a rating of 2051, and I have a rating of 1844 at the beginning of this tournament. So it's a 200-point rating difference. And so I always want to play solid against a stronger player and play a familiar opening. So my most familiar opening, the one I like to play the best, is the Nimzo Indian. I would just play e6 here. And instead I played d6. So there's not a reason why I played d6. It's just a mistake. So this is the first lesson that I wanted to draw from this game, is that it's worthwhile to take a moment before the start of the game and make sure that you've got an appropriate level of focus, that you're in proper shape in order to play a game of chess. I think I wasn't particularly tired or hungry, or I was just somehow distracted and thinking about other things. And so if I had taken a moment here, I think I could have collected my thoughts and started off on the right foot. So yeah, it's pretty disconcerting to play a wrong move on move two, I have to say. So I don't have any great ideas about how you gather your thoughts. Maybe before playing your first move, you should just sit at the chessboard and try to visualize, say, the first 3 or 4 moves of the opening you intend to play, and just do that as kind of a little ritual to try and calm down and see if you've got some kind of focus. If you're at a good level for playing chess, anything would have helped here. So I should have tried something. That's my message here. So I played d6. He went knight f3, and now I started to think a little bit, and but I was a little bit disconcerted by my play. I could go for a King's Indian at this point, but there's two things that I didn't like about it. One is I'm not so familiar with the King's Indian. I know a little bit about it, so I could get a familiar opening that way. But my opponent is actually an expert in the King's Indian. He plays that as his regular defense against d4. So I would be stepping into some potential trouble there, playing his opening against him. Although sometimes that's a useful tactic. He actually plays a particular line in the King's Indian where he doesn't go knight to c6, but he goes knight to d7. And so I could have tried that here, g6 and knight d7, and see how he responds to his own opening played against him. That would have been an idea here. But I wasn't thinking that clearly. And what I thought was, well, maybe I can get... I'd seen this configuration before with the knight here, the pawn here, and sometimes it's a way to get to a Philidor defense, which, I'm played e4, e5 a lot, and I have played the Philidor defense a bit, and sometimes it's a good surprise weapon. People aren't expecting it. So I played knight bd7, fully intending to play e5 on the next move. He played knight c3, And then here I didn't play e5. So this is another example of my distracted state. For some reason, I thought I was just losing a pawn. But of course, e5 is perfectly safe here. Let's see, if I play e5 and he takes, I can take back with a pawn. Maybe I was worried about taking back with a knight and the exchange with queens, which is probably pretty good for white. But this is a playable position. I've got that pawn here supported by my knight. The chess engine thinks that taking isn't even best here. The chess engine just wants to play e4, get the pawns like this. And so this would have been a position that I had some familiarity with. But like I said, I was still in this kind of confused state, and I didn't think e5 was possible. So 2 blunders in 4 moves. That's a pretty pretty bad record. He goes e5. I go c5. So what my idea was after I played e6 was to go for a Benoni structure, because I have played the Benonis and I have some familiarity with them. So this is okay, although it's this is a bad version of the Benoni. So it's pretty good for white here. And the reason is, let's see, he goes d5. I get in this little exchange here. He takes back his typical Benoni structure. And now I go bishop e7. The thing is that usually you want the bishop on g7 when you're playing the Benoni, but I wasn't sure if I had time to do that. If we back up a move, let's see, if I played g6 here, I was a little bit worried that he could come out with the pin. And let's see, bishop g7. It looks like he's okay here. The chess engine wants to play knight d2. I guess there's no immediate way to... Well, knight d2 prepares the queen out, but then I have time to castle. And I've got the bishop and the knight and the queen all supporting that guy. Might take a little while to unwind from this position, but it seems like I could have played that way. Looking at it from a chess engine perspective, it seems like that's not no worse or better than what I played. I'm just pretty much worse out of this opening. So somehow it's a little bit slower than a normal Benoni, the way I've played it. Let's see, he goes h3 here, which I thought at first was a little slow, but actually this turns out to be a good move. It has a couple of ideas. One of the things I might like to do with the Benoni is maneuver this knight around like this, so that it's supported by the other knight and sitting on this good square. You know, that it is one of the things to look forward to with the Benoni is this square on e5, as well as usually you have the diagonal here. You know, there's a route to get to the bishop to this diagonal by putting the bishop on f6. So that's one idea of this h3 move. It controls g4. And another idea is that if the bishop comes out and I attack it with my knight, it can drop back to h2 and not get traded off. So good move from white. Yeah, I think white's play, if you want to look at this game from white's point of view, was pretty excellent. I'll point out the one mistake he made. So let's see, I castled here. He went bishop e2. So we get some normal moves. I'm starting to settle down and get into the game here, and so I'm not playing too badly in this part. It's just that from the opening, white has a pretty good edge. I drop my bishop back to f8 to clear the this file, or yeah, this file for my rook, so it supports a knight coming to e5. Played knight d2, and here I made another mistake. But this mistake, at least, I was sort of conscious of. I thought about it, and I thought it might be okay. It just turns out it's not so great. I played knight e5. That's kind of the point of my play. And he kicks the knight immediately with f4, and then I moved it to g6. I had kind of seen that much ahead, but it just turns out the knight on g6, it's just not a good square for the knight in this structure. So let's see. The chess engine is recommending, you know, doing some pawn moves here, like a6, and trying to build up to b5. White would probably block that with the move a4, and then g6, and let's see, he would continue pushing this pawn forward, and I would go bishop g7, and I could get this structure. And his bishop at the moment is blocked by the knight. Later, if the bishop comes out, I could also chase it away with h6. So this seems like a playable position. Still better for white, but that would be you know, something maybe I could survive. After knight e5, I think the position has gone from bad to desperate, so I'm probably just losing here. f4, and I drop the knight back to g6. And actually, the chess engine wants me to put the knight right back to d7. So there's a mistake that's been made when the chess engine wants you to put the piece back where you had it. Okay, but so anyway, yeah, for the next phase of the game, white is just winning, but it's not game over. So let's play on for a few moves. White plays well here. Queen c2. I play a6, trying to get this counterplay on the queen side going. He goes a4. I go rook to b8, preparing the b4 move, and he goes a5, or preparing b5 rather. He goes a5 to stop it. I play b5 anyway. This is not so great from a point of view of my pawn structure because it'll leave me with this this isolated pawn, but I have to do something. I mean, so it's not a bad choice in this case. I think this is all reasonable. I just need to get some pressure on the queen side to counteract this attack that white has brewing against the center and the king side. Let's see. So he plays knight c4, kicking my queen, and I went queen to b3, which the chess engine actually likes. I wasn't entirely sure, but I thought removing the queens would relieve some of the pressure against the center. I mean, there's always this threat of white pushing through with e4, and also chasing my knights away, and then his pieces are a little bit offside, but the queen is well posted to take a look at my king side, and once these knights hop into the game, once this e4 pawn comes to e5, for example, this knight will have this square, and anyway, yeah, the attack comes very quickly from white in this kind of position. So I think trading queens was a reasonable decision here, and on the other hand, white doesn't want to trade queens, so queen d3 would have been a good move here. He didn't play it, so we'll come back to what he played. But the game might continue, say bishop d7, rook a3 to chase my queen back, queen drops back to b7, and I think white just has a winning game here. The chess engine gives more than a +1 advantage to white, and the material is even. So that's an indication of how strong white's position is. And it's just kind of a slow motion destruction of the center and the king side, and there's not a whole lot I can do for it. He's got the counterplay on the queen side under control. So instead, he makes his only mistake of the game. He played his queen back to b1. He just moved a little too quickly. And now there's some tactical ideas in this position. So this is the main point of the video, and what I wanted to talk about mostly. First of all, there was that little bit about preparing yourself before the game and gaining focus. I think that's an important lesson, but there's some important lessons in this phase of the game too. First of all, the one lesson is that no matter how badly the game has been going, it really only takes one move to turn it around. So there's an opportunity for me to get a playable game here. And I actually played the tactic. So I spotted the tactic on the board. I'd recovered to the point where I spotted the tactic, and I played it. But I didn't select the best version, I guess. So I don't want to say too much more about the game. I think this would be a good time for you guys to think about this on your own. So what I'd like you to do is to pause the video and see if you can spot the tactic, first of all, and then see if you can calculate it out and try and visualize the position at the end of the tactic after all the captures. Try and visualize what the position is like and determine if it's favorable for black or for white. And go ahead and pause the video now to give yourself time to do that. Okay, I'm going to start giving the answer away now. First of all, there is a tactic here that I did not play, and that I only discovered later by looking at it with the chess engine. And so if you discovered this tactic, you're pretty brilliant. This tactic is knight takes e4. And knight takes e4, of course, is giving up a piece. But after he takes back, the bishop comes out, and it looks like you're winning that piece right back. But there is a defense here. He can first lift up his rook here to chase your queen away, queen drops back to b4. That's the best square for the queen, and the rook can come over here to e3 and defend. The funny thing is the chess engine doesn't like rook e3, and it thinks that after rook e3, this is a line that's so deep only a chess engine could find this, I think. You can take this piece off. He takes back, take the knight, takes back. You come in here with check. And this does start to look a little bit dangerous. King is forced out. And you drop the knight in here. And now the move rook a3 is given by the chess engine as the best move, which leads to, well, let's show this line first. Rook a3 to defend against my rook coming to the third rank. And then I can exchange, pulling the queen away from the defense of the bishop and get my piece back. And this position is rated as even by the chess engine. But why rook a3? I mean, that gave up the back rank and lost a piece. And, well, if something else is tried, like just pushing this pawn forward, f5, then rook to b3 happens. And rook to b3 comes with deadly threats. And white's position just falls apart. So kind of amazing, this rook e3 move doesn't really work in this case. So backing up, the best line for white here is knight to f6 check. He can clear this diagonal with check. You take, and then queen takes. And then rook takes e2, because this bishop was left hanging on e2 at the end of all that. So once again, you get your piece back. So that knight takes e4 tactic right here, if you spotted that tactic and you calculated even a fraction of those lines, you're doing awfully good. No, that's not the tactic I saw. The tactic I saw is nearly as good if played correctly, and that was queen takes c3. So I had this idea, queen takes c3, he takes, I take, he takes. So I'm down the exchange, but I can win a pawn. And here's the critical point of this particular variation. There's actually two pawns I can win. I can win this pawn, I can just take it, but I could also take the pawn on e5, because or d5, because there's a pin. And after he takes my knight, I take the bishop and I win the bishop pair. And that was the line I calculated, and that's what I played in the game. I played knight takes d5, he took, and I took the bishop. And so this is the position I was talking about when I said I should calculate the sequence of the tactic and then see if you can figure out what's going on in that position or who's better in that position. And there is, in this position, one really good move for white. So if you want to just think about this, what would you play as white here? And my opponent found this move. The move that is really good here is rook to b8. And just this rook on the back rank is really annoying. So let's back up for a second and look at the other capture. The other capture is much better. Knight takes e4. It's you know, I don't win the bishop pair, but what I do get is I get more active pieces. This knight is immediately threatening to come in here to g3, and it's threatening to win the pawn on c3. In fact, the only defense here seems to be rook to f3, and then now this knight can hop into h4, kicking the rook again, and then I can develop the bishop to f5, and I've got the back rank under control. This bishop is not going to be pinned. My pieces are active. Now I'm down the exchange for a pawn, so white is still slightly better, but this is a playable game for black, and this is what I should have gone for. So so let's back up and go back to the game. I instead played knight to d5 here. Before I put that move on the board, I wanted to talk about calculating the sequence out. Let's go back to the beginning. It was in this position after he played queen b1. I spotted this tactical idea, and I had calculated out, including the idea of taking that pawn and winning this loose bishop, because you know this queen taking the knight here is doing two things. It's exposing the queen along this file, and it's removing the defender from this bishop. So that was my idea in playing the tactic, and I just played it out. So there are two mistakes I want to identify here. One is the sequence that I calculated out, I didn't properly evaluate the position at the end of the sequence. And then there's a second mistake I wanted to point out, which is as you're going through a sequence like this of tactics, you should really pause at each point and say to yourself, now, this is what I calculated, but is that really the best move in this position? Now, taking the queen clearly is the best move here. You're queen down, you've got to get it back. But right here, you could stop and say, okay, let's take a second look. You're closer to the actual position, the actual final position at the end of the tactic, and your judgment is going to be a little bit clearer. So once again, I've got a choice here between taking those pawns, and so at this point I really should have paused to consider which one of those options is really better. Try to visualize both those positions, one with my rook up here and the other with my knight here, and say which one is better. And instead I was relying on my earlier calculation and just the idea that having the bishop pair and a pawn for the exchange is often adequate compensation. So from a purely material point of view, it's better to take this pawn and grab the bishop. But it's not just a game of material; it's also a game of position. So that was my second mistake: is not reevaluating as I went through. Okay, so let's go back to the game. I played knight takes d5. I took the bishop, and he did bring his rook down here. So there's a long sequence of moves here that I'm not going to comment on. Well, let's talk a little bit about this position. It is tricky. I just want to point out that I can't play rook e8 to defend the bishop. Well, I mean, things are playable, but he can first kick my knight and then come into b6 with his knight. And this bishop is pinned. My rook is not defended here, and the bishop can't go here to defend the rook. So this is just a disaster. So I can't just come back and defend my bishop. I have to move it away. And so I played bishop out here to f5. And yeah, at this point, I think we'll go forward. Let's see, he played knight takes d6, and he's just winning. So, but there are some interesting points later in the game. So let's see, I played bishop to d3 here, trying to get some counterplay. He went bishop a3. And this move rook a2 is tempting to try and unleash a discovered attack on his rook, but it doesn't quite work. Rook a2, he can still just take on c5. He's got his own big threats along this diagonal. Not there. He's got his own big threats along this diagonal. Let's see, I can grab the rook. He can just take back. And my bishop is still pinned. I can try h5 to try and escape with my king, unpin the bishop. He goes knight f5. Let's see, I can play f6 here, trying to escape with my king this way and still hold on to the bishop. And now he can just start pushing this pawn forward, and he wins that way. So so rook a2 doesn't work here. I played knight to e7. Let's see, he goes c4. And yeah, let's just start going forward through the game now. There's just some maneuvering here. I do unwind a little bit, but he wins 2 pawns. And let's see if we count the material. Rook, 2 bishops, and a knight. And he's got a rook, 2 rooks, and 2 pieces. Yeah, I'm still down the exchange, and now I'm down a pawn as well. Oh, and he plays this kind of cute tactic. He sacrifices the exchange here, but he plays knight here to win it back, or win back another piece. So at the end of this, I'm actually down a whole piece. But he gave up a pawn to do that. So, but he won a pawn, yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So now the pawns are even, but I'm down a piece. So let's continue on. This is a lot of maneuvering going on here as he slowly wins the endgame. You know, a lot of times taking your time in the endgame is the key idea here. So this is not bad. Let's see, I had to block his rook from coming in here, so that allowed him to trade off another piece. So now it's just purely rook and bishop versus rook. And right here, yeah, this is the other point I wanted to look at. I still had some hopes of drawing, and I had just played this move, rook to c4. rook to c4, attacking his bishop and thinking he might defend it, and he totally ignored it. And so I realized actually I can't take the bishop. So if I take the bishop, let's go ahead and put that on the board. If I take the bishop, he takes back with check. I take, and then he pushes the pawn, and I can't stop it. So, so that's a winning king and pawn endgame. So I can't even take the bishop. So he just ignored it and played g5. I played a5. He dropped his bishop back here. I dropped my rook back to c3, attacking his bishop. And now there's one move for white that wins the game. So see if you can spot the tactic here, the winning move for white. Okay, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. He played the move, rook to c5 check, and I resigned. And it's the same idea. If I move the king, I lose the rook, of course. And if I take, he takes, and I take the bishop, and then he queens the pawn. Or if I don't take the bishop, he's just a bishop up. So I resigned at this point. And a good game from my opponent. He only made that one slip where he fell for the tactic. And even that was just getting me back into the game. That wasn't a losing mistake. It was just one that gave me some playing chances. Okay, hope you guys liked this video. And just a reminder, I won't be uploading any videos for a couple days. See you when I get back.